weekend, but it is GM Day here on Tim and Sid.
Yes, Ross Atkins, GM of the Toronto Blue Jays, who continuously gives us time. We don't know why, but he's been very kind to us.
We do appreciate it.
Is back in studio. Good to see you, Ross.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
I know you've been talking your ball club for most of the day. Forgive us as we continue that conversation, but these are fascinating times. Generally, I'll let you make the opening statement here because you saw more Jays baseball probably than everyone in this room. Your sense on how this year went compared to what you thought it would be to start the year?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way it ended is what we've been focused on right now with excitement. Ended with excitement around this young core. The group that has transitioned well. They are talking about winning, thinking about a group, thinking about the collective, and that's massive for us. But didn't come without a great deal of frustration. You know, losing 95 games is painful. Was very difficult for fans. We oftentimes feel as though it's much more difficult for fans because they don't have a lot of the information below on why we're making certain decisions or years of experience, not just mine or Mark Shapiro's, but Tony LaCava and Ben Cherington and Andrew Tenish and so many people believing in what is going to occur in short term here. So we're exceptionally excited about this offseason to begin that process, the next step to build upon this young core.
It's interesting because Sid and I have struggled to assess the season. And I'm not going to ask you in the 2-minute TV answer how you assess the season, but how do you guys begin to assess what you went through in what was obviously a year of change?
Yeah, I mean, as objectively as we can. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure there's not something that we're not thinking about. There's something that is not an opportunity to improve upon, whether that be with transition or development or change. We'll do that offensively, defensively, on the run prevention, on run scoring, and just think about where we've made progress, where more progress needs to occur, where change needs to occur, and then potentially where the opportunities are just to build around it.
So what's the biggest thing that you need the progress on?
Pitching. We've got to acquire pitching that can make an impact, not just depth. We have depth. We've built up the depth of guys that will over time get better, and we don't know whether it's going to be TJ Zoic, Nate Pearson, Anthony Kay, or Simeon Woods Richardson, or Jacob Waguespack that's going to be at the top of a rotation, or Trent Thornton that's going to make huge strides. No one has that crystal ball on who is going to make massive, massive strides and get just that much better. But we've got to acquire pitching that we can rely on, depend upon, that will come into the fold, and these guys can develop at the appropriate time.
There were a lot of moves this year, obviously, and some of the names on that board you guys acquired through the trades. You said something interesting previously about some of the fan base not having all the info you have.
Yeah.
What was the moment this year that you thought really got lost in translation, where you guys did something and you felt like the whole story wasn't necessarily out, and maybe the fan base in certain areas were more upset than you thought they were going to be?
It's hard to point to one thing and necessarily. There's never a time where that creates frustration for us, because it's mostly we understand that we are oftentimes making unpopular decisions. So whether that being trading Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez at a similar time, one or the other or in conjunction, we knew that was going to be tough. And we also understand that it's going to take time for us to have those household names that people can cheer for and look to and know as household names. And now this core is starting to become that. But the thing with trading those names that are so popular in this city, there is the way that Toronto sees Marcus Stroman, Aaron Sanchez, other players that have been traded away. And then there's the way that the industry sees players, and they're oftentimes misaligned. Not entirely. It's not very big, but there's some emotional attachment to players, and for us too. Right. It's difficult for us to part ways with players, but we're excited about the talent that we have acquired in those deals.
It's interesting because you're 4 years into the gig now, and you wonder where along the timeline you thought you would be 4 years in.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, do you wish, because of some of that feedback that you got, and I know that hands were tied because of extenuating circumstances at sometimes, but do you wish you had hit the rebuild a little earlier?
Well, in hindsight, you could say, okay, should we have traded player X and player Y sooner? Sure, you can say that because of whether injury, lack of performance, lack of it coming together at the right times. Again, we've talked about that a lot and don't need to get too far in depth about the reasons why we continue to try to win. But it's easy to say when we didn't win that we wished we would have done it sooner. But we are very glad we are where we are today and feel very good about what's ahead of us and could not feel more confident that this is going to be just one step in the process, transitioning these players. And whether it's 2 or 3 years from now when we're looking back and in the middle of contention at this offseason that's upcoming, we plan on this being a very important offseason as the next step towards winning.
Some of the pitching names and the young arms you have, we flashed earlier. When do you think, or when do you expect them to be ready? And when I say ready, I mean contending ready. And if you don't think it's soon, what's your play here this offseason? Because free agency has never, especially not since Clemens, for this organization, has free agency been that kind of a thing.
Right.
Should we expect you to be busy on the phones this offseason? Is this going to be a trading offseason for Ross Atkins, do you think?
No, we'll be busy, and I would expect that we'll acquire pitching that we can rely on and depend upon. And as I was alluding to earlier, the importance of us not rushing a Nate Pearson or even TJ Zoik and Anthony Kay, who have already transitioned, and ensuring that we're not too reliant upon Trent Thornton, Ryan Barucki, and making sure they can develop at the right time. As we're adding pitching that could be here for some time, not just pitchers to fill holes, that I think this offseason will look more like the offseasons after the 15 and 16 season, where we have a lot more flexibility on structure and term and a greater appetite for that because of how good this young core is.
Curious, we've heard for a while when the irons are hot, you guys have the capital to spend. Is there an organizational theory on the difference between acquiring through free agency and acquiring through trade?
Well, I think you have to do both to really, even just looking at the playoff teams, they most of them, almost all of them, there is some level of free agent contribution. There's a significant level of player development scouting contribution because you can't trade without that. So there's 3 ways to acquire talent. It's free agency, trade, and then they're homegrown. Right. But trade happens via homegrown. Right. So that's the part where it's so important for us to make sure that our system continues to be strong and that we're not compromising that at all.
Right. Have you spoken to the young core, the Vladdies, their reps, or Kevin or Bo, about possibly extending? Is it way too early in the game for you for that? And the only reason I bring it up is in order to maybe not rush your pitching, if you can at least solidify that long term, I think that might help you as well. Any conversations internally about doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, you know that I can't tell you that. Even if we were, I would say we're not a lot specific about it.
But is it an idea that when I bring it up, you smile a little bit?
Yeah,
because
man.
It would be a good thing.
It would be. Like
Okay.
those guys are, they are exceptional. I've never been around anything. I've never been around anything like it. Just how together they are, having played together through the system, grown up so young, having similar pedigree. The 3 names, obviously, having grown up in the game, they are here and thinking about winning, and we want them all here for a long time.
Right.
So I can definitely tell you that.
Fair enough.
Has their performance pushed fast forward on your process?
I would say.
I know you want to be patient.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say.
No, I would say so. I would say so. If I had to pick yes or no, I would say yes because they transition so well.
Right.
That feels as though it's time for us to start adding to this group in an aggressive, significant way. Having said that, it doesn't mean that we're going to fill every hole via free agency. We have to be open-minded about development opportunities and players continue to get better. Be open-minded about our system, providing us talent when we need to double down and really hit fast forward.
Right.
But they have definitely sped up the timeline somewhat.
It's, for me, and I don't want to be the guy that criticizes you or Mark about something, and then you come in here
We appreciate that.
And it's all smiles.
No.
And it's all smiles.
Yeah.
Because I talked about the organizational depth and pitching.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you kind of let the team down a little bit, not have, and I know injuries happen.
Yeah.
You can't Shoemaker,
Yeah.
you can't. Buckholz, you can't account for. But did you feel like maybe you would win a few more games and that might help the confidence of these youngsters if you had a little more organizational depth?
We were not successful. It wasn't that we were not trying to acquire pitchers that wouldn't be healthy. I mean, so, yes, we could have been much more successful and productive in that area. And then the setback to not just the free agents, but setback to Barucki, the fallback in Sean Reed Foley's performance, and then injuries to guys that weren't really squarely on the radar. TJ Zoik came into the fold a little bit later. But the biggest thing, it's interesting, the biggest thing that set us back early was we weren't scoring. We were staying in games. We stayed in games all year. We didn't start winning them until we started scoring.
Right.
And we just didn't score at all early. And there were guys with track records that had scored runs before and had productive seasons, and it just didn't come together at the beginning.
The reason I ask, and I just want to explain it too, because after a while you want guys to experience winning.
Yeah.
Because you think that it might hurt their confidence. Now the Astros went through 3 straight 100-loss seasons. They've come out at the end, maybe the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
But do you worry about that with these kids, that the losing might start to wear on them?
Well, it's different in that these guys are here now.
Yeah.
So, the players that they were losing hundreds a game with, who in Houston, who was it?
Altuve was there, and then
Keuchel.
Correa came along.
Yeah.
Keuchel was there. Yeah.
So, these guys are here now, so they've performed well, transitioned well, and we can speed that up. We're not going to be losing for 3 years.
Right.
We're going to do everything we can to have a much more productive season in the win-loss category. Right. And whether that means contention or not is too hard to say.
But that's in the conversation when you guys are talking over. Yeah,
absolutely.
Another thing in the conversation, at least in the public, Vladdy's conditioning.
Yeah.
What are the expectations ahead of Dunedin in 2020? What do you hope to see or not see in the offseason?
That he reports better than he's leaving us now. And that's his goal too, and he's committed to it. He knows it's going to mean significant time with us, and it's not that he comes back into shape or comes back into a position where we need to make further progress. It's that the steps that he's made already this season continue, and that when he comes into spring training, he's even in a better situation than he is today. And that he's done a good job over the course of this season. He's gotten himself in better shape, and while performing with a lot of stress on him.
Just want to clarify one thing, because I'd heard whispers that he showed up to camp this past season, and it kind of surprised some people. Is that accurate? Or did you get the Vladdy you expected to see in spring training 2019, or was that overblown?
Well, it wasn't a surprise when he reported. Charlie and I went to visit him in the Dominican Republic, and we were spending time with him. When we were visiting him, so it wasn't a surprise to us. But I think Vladdy got to a point now where he understands himself, the upside, the benefits, and all the reasons why, and we're glad we're there.
Sid and I have talked about both yours and with Mark, as a matter of fact, your contractual situations. I'm not going to ask you about negotiations or where you are on those.
But if you want to talk about that, I'm good with it.
If you want to, feel free.
You guys have any strategy suggestions?
We'll
talk to me in a little bit. Yeah, talk to me in a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've done enough to see this through, though?
Yeah, I mean, we could not feel better about the shape of this organization, and it's not just the 25-man roster. It's the overall depth in the farm system. It's the people that are helping lead this through. It's certainly not limited to Mark and I. There are so many people that are making massive, just progress for the organization, or creating progress for the organization. It's going to continue. So we could not be more confident about the future of this organization, and that's how I think about it.
So you are happy in Rogers. You are confident you will be here past another year. Because what we brought up with Mark as well was when you're talking to teams and you're talking to free agents to be and whatnot, some guys want to know, listen, Ross, I like you.
Yeah.
Where are you going to be in 3 years?
No,
I think it's a legitimate question, though.
Well, actually, my conversations with, whether it be people internally that may have those questions, people we're trying to hire, it really starts with Mark Shapiro's reputation. It really doesn't get much better than his reputation in the game. So I don't think that comes into the fold, really, for people that are considering coming here.
Like even the guys in the group that you talk about that make all the decisions, they're not curious what goes on beyond this?
That has never come up. Never come up, and I would sense it if it were. So there's immense amount of confidence among that group.
Right. So what's next for you?
we're going to work on what's available to us in this market, consider the things that we were talking about early, and, dare I say process, but we'll go through one and be very thoughtful, just about our opportunities to improve the organization. And it's exciting, very exciting to think about for us.
To be fair, this show has no problem with the process at all.
We've been defending you a lot, and I got no problems doing it. With that, but thanks, Timmy. Thank you for bringing that up. Because listen, part of the reality of the situation with this baseball team right now, you guys are aware. Some parts of the fan base will be eternally unhappy right now with anything you guys do. If you could talk to them directly, right now, let's say, because some of them are probably watching
through the magic of television.
Through the magic of television or podcast, what would the message be from Ross Atkins to the Jays fan base going into this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the things that I said. And I wake up and go to bed every day thinking about how we can make this something exceptional and something that truly is sustainable. And sustainable just means that year in and year out, our fans are expecting to be in the playoffs and expecting it in a way with confidence, because they can see the reasons why it's going to happen and not be entirely dependent upon trade or not be entirely dependent upon free agency. And they can see that there's an environment that continues to provide talent here, and that just doesn't happen without sacrifice. We feel that we've been through the bulk of the sacrifice, and now we're focused on a very positive progression towards that environment that we're hoping for and building towards.
Fair enough, Ross. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for having me on, guys.
So what's the GM meetings coming up for you? Winter meetings coming up in
all of that.
Vegas?
They're San Diego.
San Diego, pardon me.
Same
Same type of town. Same
Vegas
type of
of
town.
Southern California, San Diego.
So if we bother you a little bit over the next couple of months, are you free?
Anytime, Tim. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Sid. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Yeah.
Ross Atkins, he's the GM of the Jays. You knew that.